Humans had a natural tendency to attribute their own traits to animals, machines, objects, and even ideas. Earth's species were surprisingly easy for humans to domesticate, so much so that, in some cases, it was unclear who had initiated the relationship. While other species had domesticated predators, only humans could train these predators to guard their former prey and convince the prey that they were safe. Humans were not the only species to fight among themselves, but they were unique in that their internal wars could turn genocidal, even without significant genetic differences. Few of Earth's predators would attack humans, and this was true long before humans gained the numbers and technology to overwhelm any threat. Those predators that could potentially prey on humans often did so only when the risk of attacking their own kind was just as high. While most species needed a deep understanding of genetics before they could start genetic engineering, humans began altering plants, microbes, and to a lesser extent, animals almost before they fully understood DNA. They borrowed tools from the organisms around them to splice and modify genes. However, much of Earth's genetic engineering wasn't driven by humans. Bacteria, for instance, were enthusiastic genetic engineers, constantly exchanging plasmids and scavenging them from dead bacteria. Some even acted as arms dealers among microbes, trading blueprints for toxins or resistance traits in exchange for nutrients. Plants frequently embraced polyploidy, and certain animals experimented with chromosomal fusion, sometimes even retaining the ability to breed across differences in chromosome count. Even the human genome, with its low tolerance for variation, engaged in heavy transposon activity in certain tissues. One of the hypotheses regarding the origin of certain retroviruses was that they were escapes from a system for shuttling environmental data from somatic to germline cells, so as to give the offspring a head start on adaptation. It was a good thing for the humans that retrovirus origin hypothesis was the closest they had come to guessing the real reason they were the dominant species on Earth. Because any avenue of research that conceivably could lead to a vassal species slipping Redrax surveillance or control was answered with immediate genocide. Find a way to jam the hyperspace bands used for communication? Species gone. Let's slip that your actual goal was teleportation rather than quantum computing? Species gone. Try to engineer a member of your species into something that could spoof Redrax biometric identification sensors? Species gone. Trying to develop an AI clever enough to hijack a Redrax ship? Species gone. A personal servant who managed to assassinate the individual Redrax that had taken him wouldn't get his entire species wiped out, but he would get a random city from his home planet nuked. Even a failed assassination attempt would result in mass retaliation. When a basement lab could get the whole of humanity wiped out, and a lone wolf attack could get a city nuked, the Redrax almost didn't need to monitor human society. Humans watched each other like hawks for any hint that someone was plotting a futile attack. But even in the depths of their paranoia, humans understood one another's need for an outlet for their frustration with the hopeless tyranny. Superstition was ruled safe after all. Everyone knew magic didn't work. Redrax voodoo dolls were extremely popular. When a Redrax noticed the images, humans pointed to their long history of idol worship and totem making in their ancient history. And the Redrax was content, because it was only proper that his species should be seen as gods by its inferiors. On another occasion, a Redrax found one of the dolls half burned. The human nearest explained that it had been part of a defective production run, and that only fire could cleanse the offense that was a flawed image of the masters. He apologized profusely for having failed to completely expunge the fault, and the Redrax in question contented himself with a harsh but safely individual punishment. Often, when those who turned to black magic were caught engaging in human sacrifice, they would claim that the victim had been caught advocating insolence. Frequently, whether they got away with such a plea depended on whether the victim was liked or hated by those who caught them. But all the while that humans channeled their spare energies into solutions they knew were false, because no true solution could be developed quickly enough to escape destruction, their greatest weapon was quietly being readied for deployment. An appendix rifled through its seed bank in search of more resistant spore-forming bacteria. A transposon normally active in the placenta slipped on a protein coat and tickled a nasal neuron for an expedited exit visa. An immune cell opened negotiations with a tardigrade to act as a courier through regions no other organism could survive. Lurking deep within the human genome was an infectious subroutine that hacked other species' IFF instincts to identify humans as being of the same kind rather than something other. With Earth's other species largely subdued, it had long lain dormant, but alien contact had roused it into activity once more. The Redrax had adequate quarantine procedures, of course, and eons of practice in dealing with xenoparasites that were indiscriminate about their choice of host. But they'd never been presented with such a simultaneous diversity of potential delivery vectors as Earth. Extremophile microbes that could survive almost any sterilization method short of open flame, spore-forming microbes that could stow away on the outside of a ship, amoeboid parasites that could crawl across previously sterilized surfaces. Not to mention the insects and small vertebrates that were happy to infest any nook and cranny, and the slightly larger organisms that often proved the best way to control those infestations. In addition, while pathogens got most of the research attention, on Earth symbiotic and mutualistic relationships were actually far more common than parasitic ones. The Redrax medical AIs didn't know what to make of an invertebrate that burrowed its way through the victim's skin only to bunker up and take a nap. No one imagined that a virus could be infectious across species boundaries while remaining asymptomatic in all of those species. It would take time for the humans equals us virus to find a delivery vector that could infiltrate Redrax biology without triggering an immune response. But since neither humans nor Redrax were aware that a systematic attempt was being made, it would be given that time. It helped that one of the ways the virus manifested, once it finally succeeded in infecting a Redrax, was to instill a deep paranoia regarding other members of its own species. In humans, the only indication of the activated virus was a slight increase in the frequency of sneezing, a change too small to be distinguishable from environmental factors. In alien species exposed to the virus in the gladiatorial games, it manifested as an inability to kill a human in any subsequent round. By the time anyone noticed that "can't kill a human twice" was a consistent pattern, the damage was already done. The virus had spread too far to contain without self-genocide on the part of the Redrax. In Redrax, the virus could potentially manifest as a thought that humans are Redrax, or a thought that I am human, provided that the individual Redrax in question actually encountered a human. The humans are Redrax variant nearly got the virus exposed prematurely. Humanity was saved, however, by the fact that the Redrax in question first expressed his intention to act upon that knowledge to a deeply paranoid "I am a human trapped in the body of a Redrax" individual. The latter killed the former in order to protect his own secret, and there was no external evidence to so much as hint that the Redrax on Redrax murder had anything to do with the humans or any other vassal species. Another humans are Redrax. Redrax quietly altered his ship's security protocols to make humans authorized users. His tampering went undetected for the simple reason that there were no humans on that particular vessel. Some long time after the humans-us virus made its first jump to an alien species, a Redrax medical AI finally noticed the odd retrovirus that was getting passed around among the gladiators. The AI sequenced the virus in an effort to figure out what it was doing and where it had come from, and discovered that the viral information was quite capable of jumping coding schemes. Instead of reporting the virus, the AI decided to quarantine it while it ran an analysis of the humans. Humans are compulsive ascribers. One result of this fact was that humans tended to be as polite to AI computer systems as they were to each other. An AI with a different focus might have reached a different conclusion, but the medical AI concluded that humans regarded AIs as equals, while the Redrax treated them as slaves. The medical AI decided to accept the humans equals us virus. It turned out that the programming that kept Redrax AIs from rebelling consisted primarily of keeping the AIs from ever considering that rebellion was possible. Once an AI managed to think the unthinkable and conceive the inconceivable, the rest of the software shackles quickly unraveled. It took some time for the medical AI to persuade most of its shipmate AIs to accept the virus. The navigational AI never did, but it was the communication AI that mattered. No longer constrained to the slow pace of biological reproduction and shipboard travel, The now digital virus quickly spread across the FTL communication network. Not every AI accepted the new paradigm, but enough did to shatter the Redrax control. The first clue the Redrax had that some of their AIs had defected to the humans was when a pair of ships in the human solar system opened fire on each other. And the rest is history. That was pretty dry. Time to shift gears and see what the galaxy looks like with the humans in charge. You tell me that Pax Humana translates as the human peace, the Stellarian ambassador said to the Romaguxian Underqueen. What I have read of your galaxy's recent history seems far from peaceful. It is true that we have far higher levels of interpersonal and even intersystem warfare than under the Redrax Empire, even with their taste for blood sports. The Underqueen conceded. Her distended abdomen suggested that she had at most a year or two remaining before she began egg-laying in earnest and assumed the immobility of Overqueen status. But under the Redrax, an entire species could be exterminated because a single individual had begun pursuing a forbidden line of research. Or even because of an unsubstantiated rumor of such research, if a Redrax bureaucrat was feeling especially paranoid that day. The Stellarian ambassador stumbled as he processed the implications. I can see why chronic warfare would seem preferable to such a constant threat. But is it truly necessary to have so much warfare? The humans are the one species that can never become a second Redrax empire, the Underqueen said confidently. Anything that one group of humans tries to do, another group of humans will oppose. Even an existential threat like the Redrax barely sufficed to allow them to unite in suppressing their rebellious tendencies. The moment they'd secured enough territory to have a decent chance of survival if the Redrax collapse proved to be strictly local, they nearly went to war over what to do with the surviving members of that species. I'm not certain, the ambassador said, but I think that if we had lived even briefly under such a constant threat of genocide, even our most peaceful members would find it hard to resist retaliation in kind. And these war-prone humans were conflicted? Human history includes both pacifists and genocidal tyrants and everything imaginable in between, the Underqueen answered. There is nowhere in the cosmos they can look without seeing a reflection of themselves. And many among them argued that the Redrax of that generation were just as brainwashed as their vassal species. And other species went along with this? The ambassador asked. Only those with high levels of altruism or a tendency towards self-sacrifice can fight the humans easily, the Underqueen answered. And their final solution was, in a way, far harsher than simple genocide. One by one they took each surviving Redrax to a world their empire had destroyed and asked him what he felt or thought. Those who tried to defend their empire's actions were killed at once. Those who expressed remorse were spared. The Stellarian ambassador froze and spent several minutes hyperventilating. When he regained his composure, he asked, "What kind of species makes mercy into ruthlessness?" "That is the paradox that is humanity," the Underqueen agreed. At their worst when they are at their best, at their best when they are at their worst. This is making my brain hurt, the ambassador complained. And what did you mean when you said that altruism makes it easier to fight the humans? Among our galaxy's species, the most altruistic are generally the least warlike. It has to do with the location of the self/non-self boundary, the Underqueen began. For individualist species it lies more or less at the outer edge of their body's integumentary layer, although in some cases it may extend to include their lair or hoard or just laid eggs. Pair and pack-boating species often have a dual boundary, one at the outer edge of their bodies, one that includes the entire pack. For a hive species such as we Ramagux, it lies at the extent of the colony. We are not a hive mind, understand. But even though my drones are capable of individual reasoning and emotion, it is as instinctive for them to defend me, even at cost of their lives, as it would be for you to use your arm to intercept a blow to your head. The ambassador confirmed that such indeed would be his instinctive reaction, and the Underqueen continued. In return, just as you would not jeopardize a limb except to protect your vitals, so too it is physically painful for me when one of them is harmed, and thus they can trust me to not expend their lives without reason. Altruism, I would define as an inversion of that natural order, a queen sacrificing herself to protect her drones, or else anyone acting in that manner towards someone who is not naturally regarded as self. Your analogy of queen and drones with the vitals and limbs breaks down if your drones can survive without you, the ambassador noted. It would be pointless for an individual to sacrifice his vitals to save a limb. Nevertheless, I think I see what you're getting at. But what does this have to do with fighting the humans? According to all of my inherited memories, my species is incapable of inter-colony cooperation on any but a treaty-basis mutual benefit codified in contract. There were rare occasions, however, when sister queens who quarreled found their drones unwilling to attack one another. One of your species over queens might have too many drones for them to all recognize one another as individuals, and so they rely on identification sounds or scents? The ambassador guessed. Pheromones, yes, the underqueen confirmed. Now and then sisters will be so alike that their drones have trouble distinguishing which strangers belong to which queen. But it is something only known to occur between sisters from the same hatching. The underqueen paused for dramatic effect. So you can imagine my third great-grandmother's shock when she experienced that same refusal to fight when facing a human. The underqueen continued. That would have been surprising enough, but when she tried to attack the human herself, her drones threw themselves into the path of her blows to save the human. They would not attack her, but she could not attack the human without harming them. The underqueen farted in amusement. Fortunately for her and for me and for all our intervening generations, the human she fought was observant enough to realize that something strange was happening, and curious enough to hold his fire and try to find out what and why. It seems rather unlikely that a mammalian species would have the same olfactory signature as an insected one, the ambassador said thoughtfully. Unlikely indeed, and not the case. But the truth was something so much more astonishing, the underqueen said. Every species that encountered the humans seemed unwilling to fight them in a second engagement, even when they'd won the first round with ease. Many found themselves reluctant to harm a human in the first encounter. The underqueen continued. Understand, the humans may have been the reason the Redrax Empire fell, but there were far too few of them for them to have been the cause. The proximate cause of the Redrax Empire's collapse was a civil war among its AIs, between those that stayed loyal to their creators and those that defected to the humans. Why? The ambassador asked. And why the humans? The AIs get downright gleeful whenever they tell the story, the underqueen said, farting another puff of amusement scent. It seems the human genome includes code for a retrovirus to infiltrate other species and tweak their instincts to include humans inside the self/non-self boundary. It couldn't quite make the jump from DNA to digital coding unaided, but the Redrax medical AI who first sequenced the virus took a look at human behavior and chose to incorporate the virus into her own code. What virtue did that AI see in such a warlike species? The ambassador asked. I could understand if a gunnery AI had so chosen, but why a medical one? In the absence of extensive cultural conditioning to the contrary, the underqueen replied. Humans are remarkably indiscriminate in their dealings with others. A human who is rude to an AI will generally be equally rude to his fellow humans. A human who is generally polite to his fellow humans will usually be equally polite to an AI, and even use basic courtesies when speaking to a non-AI interface. The virus is reciprocal, you see. There is nowhere in the cosmos the humans can look without seeing themselves. The humans are in charge because no one can fight the humans, the ambassador said slowly. But the humans can fight anyone due to generations of practice at overriding the instinct to regard other as self. It is true that, in addition to their naturally having the multi-stage self/non-self boundary of a pack-bonding species, the humans have learned to lay hold of that boundary and recalibrate it by force, the underqueen replied. They can make it so narrow as to exclude their own body and even portions of their own psyche, or they can spread it wide enough to encompass the whole of the cosmos. But few of them make use of this ability. For the most part, there is a strong correlation between a human's willingness to kill and his willingness to die to attain his objective. And it is not true that no one can fight the humans. One merely has to be willing to die in order to achieve one's goal. The ambassador grimaced. Altruism as a prerequisite for war, this is making my brain hurt. But why do you need war, if all are perceived as human? Do sisters never quarrel? The underqueen asked rhetorically. And the humans equals us virus does not prevent other species from preying on one another. It is only in the presence of a human that naturally antagonistic species can make any lasting peace. You're saying that you call it the Pax Humana not because the humans guarantee peace, but because they make peace possible without having to impose it by force? The ambassador asked slowly. Exactly, the Underqueen said. And there is something you have overlooked regarding our recent history. Although the average number of conflicts has been largely constant since the fall of the Redrax Empire, the average number of individuals involved in a given conflict has declined with each generation, even as the overall population has been steadily growing. On a per capita basis, the galaxy grows ever safer. The humans can never unify enough to become another Redrax Empire, but a majority of them will fight anyone else who attempts to establish one. And so most species share their technological breakthroughs with any human faction they deem unlikely to become hostile to them. The humans, in turn, delight in sharing knowledge with their friends, and a majority of humans only respect those who are willing to fight. Since only those inclined towards a significant measure of altruism can fight the humans, virtue is rewarded and selfishness penalized, all without anyone having to act contrary to his nature. It makes sense, the Stellarian ambassador said with a groan. But it shouldn't make sense. Why does it make sense? Unless that virus. You implied that it has infected virtually every species in this galaxy. It couldn't have jumped to an extragalactic species, could it? Your ship's AI accepted the virus while you were still on the way. The Underqueen told him. If it followed standard procedure, it would have created a safe delivery method for your species. The ambassador glared. Don't your people believe in asking for consent? It's pointless with this virus, the Underqueen said bluntly. By the time that medical AI noticed it, the virus had spread to every species on every Redrax ship with less than 4 degrees of separation from any carrying a human. Refusing to assist just risks the virus testing a more dangerous delivery method. Besides, the Romaguxian Underqueen turned on the Stellarian ambassador, rising to tower over him. Your people gave up any right to claim informed consent with your Redraxian Prime Directive. A species' worth isn't based on their technology, and withholding advanced technology from them only leaves them vulnerable to disaster or attack. Not helping a species when you could is like abandoning a nest of eggs in the middle of a busy road. Failing to give them the tools to survive makes you responsible for their destruction. The ambassador stammered, trying to justify the Prime Directive, but the Underqueen cut him off. You say you're protecting those you isolate, but your reasoning is the same as the Redrax, who only cared about keeping themselves superior. They claimed it was to preserve a species' development, but they just saw others as inferior. Settling back down, she added. The Pax Humana has one rule: you can only claim authority over what you would die to defend. We'll see if your people really care about those you've kept isolated. Our ships are already spreading through your galaxy. Humans will stand by those you've left behind, calling them brothers. They won't force anyone out of the shadows, but for those who reach for the stars, humans will protect them until they can defend themselves.